Let's go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen,
Sorry,
and welcome
continue.
to episode 14 of the Old World Bein. That's staying in the intro. My name is Alice Blair, and I am a behemoth because today, as my smoker's cough voice indicates, I raced the Noosa Triathlon supporting Beyond Blue and raised some funds for them. And it only took me 5 hours in between everything else to get through the race. With me is the full crew. All the behemoths are here. Chris, welcome. Why are you a behemoth?
I'm a behemoth because I just spent $315 on a dinner in Melbourne, and it was the best meal of my life.
Okay. Tom, why are you a behemoth?
Because I haven't spent $315 on a dinner in Melbourne in years because it would bankrupt me.
When was the last time you spent $315 on anything?
I was going to make a your mum joke, but I decided against it. So we'll just move on.
Alex, welcome. Why are you a behemoth?
First of all, I'm deeply offended, Chris, because we had a behemoth date in Melbourne.
We did.
The night before your $350. Are you saying that our $100 dinner was not the best you've ever had?
Was it a 10-course Japanese?
10-course.
10-course Japanese dinner, complete with wine pairings.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
It
well,
was
there you
some
go.
cheap pasta and pizza.
So this
I
marks
thought
The heartier the better, though, no?
departure.
Surely.
This marks the departure of the Old World Behemoths from being a socially relevant and responsible podcast. And our next series of episodes will be on Chris's fine dining experiences as we transition into a different target audience.
Until I get
move on
bankrupt
and
in
quickly
about a
thank our
month's time.
patrons. Yeah, correct. It's not going to take you long, mate. Thank you to all of our patrons. We have a new patron this week: Death 1942, Ghost, Panda Wargaming, Joshua 6, Silver Dave, Gomo, Bonehead, Earl of Kent, Ulla Z, Western Sydney Wargamers, The Orange Juicer, Big Daddy H, Torytown 69, and welcome to the party, Prophet of Sotec. If you'd like to become a patron, you can follow the link in the show notes or description or video details wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. Thank you, of course, to 25 Creative, who is currently designing some very interesting Old World Behemoths collateral that will make an appearance at our next event in February of next year. But this evening, we've got a couple of things to talk about. We've got the Marauders release, which has obviously popped up in a couple of articles. But then we're also going to talk about the roundup of 2025, the final event that some of the behemoths will be seen at this year. And then our plans, attending events, the things that we're excited about for 2026. We might drop in a hint or two for our next event in February, and then we'll wrap up with hobby as usual. But I'm going to save my poor tortured voice at this point. Alex, run us through what we've got from Marauders.
I'm surprised you're actually awake, first of all. I mean, full triathlon. I think I made the joke that I would have died literally standing at the starting line. It all went to plan.
Okay, we'll do this. No, it didn't. Not at all. My bicycle seat post failed to hold itself up, so I ended up riding a road bike like a low rider, which I'll tell you what, great for the quads and not for anything else. That tortured my knee, which then led to the run being extremely slow. And people were dropping like flies this year. For anyone who I haven't told before, I feel like I've told everyone. I try and get up to do the Noosa Triathlon every year. I've done it for the last 8 or 9 years with 1 or 2 exceptions. I fundraise for Beyond Blue while doing so. But this year was rough. This year, I've never seen so many people walk on a 10K run at the end of the day. And yeah, loads of people
Global
dropped
warming,
into heat stroke. I had look, it's not been the hottest day that I've done this run on, but there was just something about today. I had two guys
That's also
drop
not funny,
directly
Chris,
in
by the
front of
way.
me, and I ended up
Heat stroke is very serious.
stopping to help and have a bit of a rest. But other than that, yeah, no, things went fine. But other than the fact, of course, that after 4 months of training, my son brought home a bug last week, which made me sick, which means that I have an upper respiratory infection, and I did the whole event with that. So that's why my voice is gone more than anything else. But Marauders.
I would love to give
Marauders,
you a little bit of stick for like excuses, but also you tried to do a marathon and I didn't, so I'm just going to keep it silent.
I'd also like to point out that I don't have my traditional curl in my moustache anymore, in recognition of the $2,500 that my fundraisers rose. It was going to go to 3,000 and the whole moustache was going, but we didn't quite get there. So for 2,500, I gave it a bit of a trim. So unfortunately, my fabulous curl, my 2-inch curl, is gone, and now I'm just left with this toothbrush.
Well, next year we'll get it to 5,000.
Easy.
Marauders. This was one of those releases which people had been talking about kind of like under the surface. If you were tracking the rumor mill, everyone was like, oh yeah, Cathay, the future's coming, Kislev, oh my gosh, Kislev's coming. And then just in the background, there's some talk about, well, there's going to be a Chaos refresh. And randomly, like GW just drops this on a like Monday afternoon. No pretense. Everyone was thinking that it was going to come out in next week's reveals, which are the Global World Team Championships, I believe, Chris. And there's a live stream there with Old World coming out
Just
from
put
it.
me on the spot. That's all good.
Yep, do that. Now the key thing was to note about that is they released this 2 weeks before, and everyone thought, "Oh my gosh, this is great." I mean, there's a Marauder refresh coming. Now, what people are also talking about is that next week in the reveals, there's actually more being added to this. So we'll go into the detail, but I just want to stop for a second because when we had the Cetra Arcane Journal, we spoke about this in one of our previous episodes about it really being the southern story arc. And now the Raising of Westerland is more taking part in that northern sector of the story arc where Cathay's landed. And so I think there's this really great duality happening now in the old world where we can bounce around into different factions, drop in with an arcane journal here and there, some narrative, bring in a refresh of models, bring in some rules, and then head back down south. What's happening in the east? Who knows? I don't know. Are the elves coming from the west, Alistair?
Just to clarify,
look,
it's not. I think
wish,
the team.
but
sorry, I just think that the team's event, I think, was last month. This is the World Championships of Warhammer. Is the
yes? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. The actual official like Age of Sigmar worlds, I think.
Yeah, and 40K and stuff. Yeah.
So with because they've actually released the. Go ahead, Alistair.
I think there's a slight delay on my internet, and I'll try and resolve that in just a second. But I think just in terms of the arcane journals, we spoke a little bit around maybe an episode or two ago before we had Richie on. We spoke a little bit around, you know, how we thought the arcane journals were going to shape up in terms of telling the story for the old world, and I think it's becoming a little bit clearer the more of these new arcane journals get released. So we had Cetra, and now, of course, we have the Raising of Westland. I think it's becoming a little bit clearer that the focus of each of these journals will be on the characters that have been released as part of the army-based arcane journals with the Armies of Infamy, where I don't think right now there's really that sort of impetus in either of the two that have been released in terms of introducing new special characters, but instead fleshing out how the special characters that they've featured so far are actually starting to interact and inhabit the Warhammer world. And I find that really interesting because it's maybe a little bit of a departure from the sort of manic nature of Warhammer releases we've seen in the past, where it's been more models, more things for you to buy, more introductions, more characters, more layers. I think the pivot to focus, because this is all about Fridal, right? And how her campaign to invade the Empire is sort of going. And in that they're talking about Cafe as well, and the focus is still very much on an existing Warhammer faction with the characters that they've released in the Arcane Journal that was specific to that faction or where that faction will be oriented.
For sure. And the point that I keep thinking about in this release is that they're able to refresh a model range by saying it's Warriors of Chaos, but release an Arcane Journal with it. And this, to be specific about that, what they're saying is, yes, these models can be used as Warriors of Chaos Marauders as your replacement for the models that I think are probably 25 years old. I could be wrong, or at least 20 years old on that. The old muscly guys. Great models from back in the day. But here they're talking about actually bringing in a Marauder faction, whereby a bit like Wolves of the Sea, where if you want to play the Marauder faction, you can play them where they're not fully converted to Chaos yet. They're still worshipping the totemic gods, which are in their forms, which we've got on the screen, the Hound being Khorne, the Serpent being Slaanesh, etc. And what I'm totally envisaging here is that you're not going to have Marks of Chaos. Instead, you're going to have the cults of, or the totemic gods. So rather than cults of chaos, it's like Mark of Khorne instead as, something of the Hound.
Yeah.
And there's something of the Serpent.
Do you find it a bit weird that I believe in the fluff and even on the maps, they specifically mentioned Norsca almost as if it's a faction. And we've had Wolves of the Sea, and now we're getting these guys, and they're not actually directly tied to Norsca. I know that those models would fit with that theme, but it's weird to me that they have seemingly released two Chaos Waste armies in a sense, and none of them are actually the official Norscan faction.
Yeah, true. Well, you can see here they're also introducing a Law of the Shadowlands plus magic items. So if there's anything that's going to be Norsca, this is going to be it. Because if you play Total War, and Alice is probably going to correct me here, where fundamentally the Norscan faction is not like Warriors of Chaos and Chaos Spawns and whatnot. It's properly diverged.
Is that the Total War 3 where they bring in Kislev and they have to go? Yeah, because I've literally just started playing that maybe 3 or 4 days ago as a rerun. And I don't know, they still have a lot of demon influence. They've got skull cannons of Khorne in there. They've got giants and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's really interesting. I'm really keen on a refresh.
Yeah, sorry. I think the focus, using Total War Warhammer as an example is fraught with potential dangers. But given how closely they've tied things like Cathay at this point, maybe it is the right thing to be doing. But the Marauders are very much, it's quite focused on the human elements of chaos warfare. So yeah, there's aspects there's the giant mammoths, and there are chaos hell cannons and things that you can introduce to the faction, but they're still very much focused on, Marauder core, Berserkers core, Marauder hunters, all of those sorts of things that sort of hold them down. The things I'd be interested about, and didn't we get a mention of this? What are the big lizard people called? are we
The
expecting
Firmir?
them?
Lizard men.
Yeah, the Firmir to come back as a range.
They're deep in the catacombs of the rumor person. Apparently, the Holy Oracle Jav has said that they are coming. I would note that they're also saying, again, plenty of salt on this, that next week we're expecting to see 2 more things. So we're seeing 2, which we'll quickly look at. These models, fantastic models here.
Incredible.
Plus 2 more to be revealed.
Surely
One
a
being
war mammoth.
Well, who knows, Chris? Who knows? I think people are praying for that, but we'll see. But these models, gosh, I mean, do you know what I thought when I saw this? And I'm a 3D printer, as you know, boys. I actually thought to myself, oh gosh, like this is actually GW showing where their quality and the reason why their price tag comes in is like the highest of quality miniatures in theme.
Yeah. I don't know if the price tag can ever be justified, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
As opposed to the other STLs on the market. So it's like, this is a premium product, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm still blown away that they, within the span of 18 months, have released essentially these models for AOS in the Dracoth models. And then now they've dumped them into Old World as well. And it's like, that whole split between Old World and AOS confuses me even to this day. I thought that the Dracoth models were beautiful, and I'm pretty sure I've seen some people use them as Marauders in Old World. These obviously fit Old World a lot better. And I actually know a couple of AOS guys who are looking at this box and going, wow, I get like 4 times as many models for the same price.
Literally twice.
I'm just going to buy this box and use them in AOS. So
yeah. Yeah, well, even they say they're highly customizable kit, 2 heads for every model. So you're going to be left with a bunch of bits.
Yeah, when they say that, are they sort of returning back to that modular GW kit? Like, remember old school Space Marines, you used to be able to kit bash every Space Marine kit that was available. Is that sort of what we're returning to here, except for,
No, I think, and I'm basing this off like AOS kits that have come out recently. They kind of they'll have like a body shape, and it's like, build the body in this way, and then you'll be able to swap out 1 or 2 of the arms, and you'll usually get like 1 or 2 head options. So it's more modular than what they were doing for a little while. It's not the same as the old school kits where you kind of just have that torso, could slap almost any head on it and any arms and do whatever pose you want.
Yeah. I understand like the drive for more detail, and as technology increases, et cetera, that's fantastic. But there was something really special about putting together your own Space Marine or your own Adeptus Custodes or something similar, and you could really kit bash and go from there. But these models just look absolutely incredible. I'm so excited.
Do you think this is a reaction? I mean, look, we're fully speculating, but do you think it's a reaction to the 3D printing style where they are trying to reintroduce, that nostalgia factor? Like, I think it's every hobbyist's experience that when you bought loads of plastic sprues, particularly for the Warhammer miniatures back in the good old days or the bad old days, it was every hobbyist's experience that you'd have a half a dozen spears left over outside of a unit. You'd have musician bits and heads and banners. You'd end up with a torso or 2, depending on how specialized it was. Do you think it's a return to that?
I think that's a good point. I would say that the trend has been to add more options and to have more leftover bits and kits. And I think you're right. It's probably leaning a little bit into, any one of us can just go out and get a 3D printed model and probably have way more options than GW could ever produce for that range. But I think they still, when they start off with these kits, they've got a very strong design in their mind, and I think they don't really pay too much attention to what everyone else is doing, and they just go, we're just going to produce some amazing looking models and just push them out.
I mean, GW has always done GW stuff, right? That's their cold hard mantra. That's why they did AOS in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah. I think Alice has got a good point, actually, because, and to your point as well, Tom, when you look at 3D prints, like, yes, the STL market is wide, we'll say that, but it's actually not as customizable as people think it is. Because once you have all of the models set, you can't actually change a lot very easily unless you've got skills. So I think it's a good point, because being able to say, look, if you want to print an army, quote unquote, for cheap, it's not always cheaper, as we've discussed in previous episodes with Jeff. Then you can go with that route. But if you want like highly customizable, as you're saying, Tom, then yes, these kits are going in that direction. The other thing that they're doing here, they're taking the opportunity to move up the base size. But I do want to say one point before we discuss about it, just pop back into my head about why they're doing this. I think this signals a couple of things. One is, we know that Cathay was a new army, greenlit, probably after the old world launched, that it sold well. Okay, we can actually commit to doing a new army. We know we're going to get a return here. What I think this is signifying is that they're happy to not just look at new armies. They're happy to refresh the older models, which, by the way, they had no obligation except for the old grognards.
Fan servicing. Yeah, exactly.
Fan servicing. So they're going for it. But, Chris, to your point, you've now got to split in the lines. Like, we had Marauders last year, and these are definitely more to the old world aesthetic, being able to be ranked up. They're fantastic. Going to 30 millimeters is a very interesting choice, because that's currently what the Chaos Warriors inhabit. So in my mind, this Marauder refresh we might even be seeing the Marauders becoming a more heavier force, like, rather than light infantry just running around with their nipples up.
Physically, they're going to stand a little bit taller than like the Empire range.
For
they're
sure.
kind of going to be those like 6-7 foot Norse
just
gods,
inevitably,
like,
though, right? Just because, I don't know if that's like an intentional design choice. It's just like the direction of the technology of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just going to be, and on that point, there's a lot of rumors circulating around about new Ogre, not Ogre, models for Age of Sigmar, and I really wonder what base size they'll sort of inhabit. I know they'll be on circle bases, but I wonder if they're going to be like another third bigger than the current Ogre line. I think everything's just getting bigger. I mean, that's arguably why they introduced Primaris Marines in the first place, right? It's a really, it's going to be interesting.
Well, I don't know if they even previewed this, but do we know what the totemic bits are in this kit? Like, how do you go, these are the Hound Marauders? Is it just like a banner, or?
I think it's going to be up to the hobbyists. I mean, you're very right, Chris. It might quite literally have specific champion bits that signify the different things, or images. But I would imagine it's transfer sheets and up to the hobbyists to paint them as they see different standard options and so forth.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next week, let's hope for some more reveals. Chris, you're calling a mammoth. We'll say that Alice is calling the Firmir.
Do you know about their lore, by the way, and how they probably need to rewrite it?
No, I don't. I'm going to say no.
There's some extremely problematic lore around the Firmir. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay, not Games Workshop's finest moment.
No, please elaborate. Please.
Are we saying that Games Workshop has taken something from somewhere?
No, let's just say they went down a path that they shouldn't have gone down.
All right.
Did you guys ever watch Star Wars?
I've only seen season 1 of Andor, mate. Don't spoil it.
Okay. Yeah. Because there's that bipedal things that like walk around in Star Wars every now and then? I just feel like I've seen them in 40K at some point. But anyway, I don't want to go too hardcore into the legalese. So let's just move on. Anyway.
Cut. All right, moving on. Absolutely not referencing a current law case that's going on in Italy. So the 2+ Team Blitz. Now we have to shout this out because currently in our diaries, anyway, this is going to be the final event of the year that some of us attend before we head into talking about 2026. Unless by some miracle, Alex Brown and the 2+ boys pull out a Christmas special again, like they did last year, where I lost all 3 games with Skin Wolves, came dead last, lowest scoring player for the year. They've gone down a different route for this one, November 30, which is not a doubles event. It is a teams event of 2, where you have 2 1,000-point forces. A 6x4 board gets split straight down the middle, and you play 2 1v1 matches, and the cumulative kill points total from the matches determines the winner. So Alistair and I have decided to go all in on the evil armies and do something rather interesting. Let's say that. Alistair.
Are we going to elaborate, or is it a secret?
Interesting only that Alex is fully indulging and committing to his 2026 goal of only playing demons for the entire year. But at least it gives me the chance to dust off some models, as we'll sort of get to when we look at hobby. But it is going to be an interesting event. I mean, 1,000 points on a 3x4 is not necessarily something that you look at and think, oh, that's how this is sort of structured and played. And it's going to be an interesting one to see in comparison to some of the Battle March events, because of course this was put together before sort of Battle March came out, I think. And for our event in February, we're looking very much for doubles to introduce some of the rules in list construction from Battle March, which is quite a different way of playing. Now, what they've done in terms of list construction here is interesting. They've applied things like Highlander. They've gone low fantasy to make sure that magic items aren't rampant. They've put some limitations and restrictions on some of the units that you can sort of bring along. But it'll be really interesting to see how people adapt to bringing a different variant of all the different army choices that you can have, or unit profiles that you can have, given that you're only allowed to do sort of one of each. I think we've sort of talked about this, that I'd expect, or we're expecting, probably a few Death Star style approaches, just given, the way that you're going to see maxed out units and maxed out characters on individual profiles, and then just have them sort of applied. But it'll be really interesting to see. I'm quite looking forward to getting the Dark Elves out and doing a bit of interesting things with very large bases.
Yep, and it's the first time I can play Demon Prince. Spoiler. My gosh, we've spoiled the whole game.
I feel like if anything has come out of hobby, or my life involving hobby, is that the communities love a team event. I mean, we used to run them back in 2013 for Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, and then X-Wing made a big sort of deal out of them. They're just so much fun, and it's a completely different way of playing the game that you're used to. So yeah, props. Wish I could make this one for sure.
Well, they've also done something rather different, very different, in fact, which is, if you notice on there, replace all instances of the word skirmish with open order. And at first glance, this can be a bit like, oh gosh, that's a bit of an odd choice. But what it does, after you've played a few games, is it makes sure that high avoidance armies aren't just flying over the top of you, 360 charging, and giving you a disadvantage. It's completely a charge forward, have a massive bash up in the middle, and then you're done. The game's done. Move on to the next game. So, and this one, there's 4 games. We should have said at the start. Probably could have even gone to 5. They're that fast.
How do you feel
interesting though,
about that
because
with the skirmish? You go ahead.
Well, replacing replacing. There's my lag again for you. Replacing skirmish with open order leads to some really interesting and again niche rules interactions in terms of, so one that we've seen, skink skirmishes, right, are now skink cohorts effectively, whereas they've never been able to have an open order approach. But on top of that, Croxigors now interact with skinks in a super fun way. And this is something that, the Brown brothers have looked at and thought, oh, okay, maybe this is something that apply a common sense approach and it works. But Croxigors have a special rule that allows them to interact with skink skirmishes in a way that they can see through them, they can see over the top of them, they can charge through them and count them for coherency. And the way that they've then translated it now that skink skirmishes can't be in skirmish anymore is that Croxigors can sit behind a unit of skink skirmishes, wait for the unit to get charged, and then charge directly through the unit and into combat while just moving the skirmishes out of the way. And it's really interesting. But I think Alex and I have looked at this because it applies to things like lone characters as well. So lone characters aren't skirmish anymore. There's no 360 line of sight for your Pegasus Baron or anything like that. And I think it lends it lends a bit of legitimacy to this sort of change by taking away things that feel at times quite exploitative. And I don't mean like intentionally exploitative when it comes to skirmish, but it's a real feels bad when, there's a sorceress who's jumping out of your arcs and line of sight and blasting you with spells, or there's a baron that hops over the top of you so that you have to reform to get around in front of him. This time around, they're limited by being open order or close order, depending on what's on their profile. They don't get that freedom in skirmish, and I think it's going to make a big difference.
I do wonder if the
I love that.
50-point total on character upgrades or magic items is enough to stop magic missile spam, because at 1,000 points, a wizard throwing out magic missiles could be extremely powerful. And I wonder if you still take a ruby ring.
I've tried it, Chris. Yeah. It didn't work. And I'll tell you why.
Well, because
because again, the line of sight issue is there, but also because there's nowhere to hide your wizard, because there's stuff like you'll get probably one good round of magic off and then you're in combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm assuming the game boards are quite short as well, or like small. And then also the magic wielders are probably level 1, level 2 maximum? Or can you go level 4? 250 points on a lord. You could definitely do it. But
so
yeah,
I believe it's still grand melee in that you can only take a level 3. I'm trying to read the tiny small print on my iPhone. But I think you can still I think you can still only take a level 3. But I suppose just to that, 3 by 4, 4 is the length and 3 is the width. So you've got, 36 inches across and 48 inches deep. And the deployment zones are all 12 and 12. So there's 24 inches of space between the two of you. And there's only 36 inches across the board. Things collide, and there's terrain in the way that narrows that even further. There's different. They've got a whole series of boards with interesting sort of gimmicky special rules, which I don't know whether they'll really impact or have that big of an influence over the game types. But at the same time, the boards force you to conflict, and so trying to play avoidance is going to be extremely hard. And even with a flying wizard where, you might have the freedom to jump over something, as Alex pointed out, the line of sight issue is real. It's not like a Pegasus is fast cavalry. So you don't get a fly 9 move and then a pivot at the end. You get your fly 9 move, and that might be 6 inches in one direction and then 3 inches of movement, which doesn't in the end get you that far. So magic missiles, yes and no. As Alex said, we've tested a bunch of lists, and I think his favorite, which was of course the Flamers of Tzeentch, just couldn't do it, just couldn't pivot and position themselves. And so I don't know. We'll see the sorts of lists that people come up with. I mean, the 1,000 points is a pretty niche composition level. So it's not like we see a lot of what's meta at 1,000 points, and what's meta at 2,000 points doesn't always work at 1,000 points. So I don't know. We'll see. Alex and I have gone
That
with
can be a lot of fun, though. I mean,
totally
that's half
different approaches to what we do normally.
Half the battle. Yeah, I really like that. And I think the Brown Brothers have been sort of tempting changes to the skirmish keyword and the skirmish special rule for quite a while. I mean, they're quite critical of it, and I think that that's justified in a lot of ways. So yeah, that'll be really fun. Keen to see a debrief, an OWB debrief.
I would suggest to anybody that's going who's running a lone character to get a test game in, because guaranteed you will forget about lone characters not having skirmish. Game 1, game 2, it will come up and you will go, oh, whoops, because we've done it plenty of times. All right, moving on. Now that we've spoken about the end of the year, Tom, take us away into 2026.
This is huge. And I think this is something that, obviously not everyone has the ability to get into, nor the foresight of actually fulfilling. But the WSWG guys, who we constantly praise and constantly hold in a very high regard, have actually put out their entire 2026 tournament schedule. And so I think if you're not involved in any of their group chats, and if you're not privy to what's going on, screen cap this, whack them in the calendar. I've whacked every single iteration of their events into my calendar already, and I'm fully prepared to get involved, and I could not be more excited. So WSWG, I think they're always going to be, at least to what I understand, they're always going to be out of Blacktown RSL, and we can maybe link, the next the next tournament in our description of the YouTube box, so we can always, our audience can at least have a look at what's coming up and get all the details. But yeah, we've always said, I think pretty much every episode that we've ever done on Behemoths here, we've recommended them. And that's not changing. And now you get to go to potentially every single WSWG event in 2026. Interestingly, they've added double day events, and I am really excited for that. I think that, the more the tournament scene sort of expands, the more that becomes maybe necessary. I'd like to continue to say that they're events more than tournaments, and it's more of a community-based, let's just go and have as many games as possible. But the problem with single-day events with 40-plus players is that inevitably you're going to have multiple people at 3-0, and it's just going to come down to those tiebreakers. The beauty of a double-day tournament is that, you can get 5 rounds in and you'll have a clean winner at the very end, so you don't have to rely on those weird tiebreakers. So this is fantastic, and I'm so excited for 2026 events just out of WSWG, and that's not factoring in any of the other events that are going to be happening here in New South Wales. So I'd really encourage tournament organizers, when they can do this, to do so. And this is just, the best thing that I've seen out of the old world for a long time.
Yeah,
outside
I
of
think
Alex's baggage train that was robbed of best baggage train at the most recent event.
I think there's 2 things that I really like about this. The first one is they've stepped their game up for communications as a TO. So the old world is still young, right? We don't really have set in stone, these are the yearly events that we all know are going to happen and everyone's going to plan around it. We're kind of still in a bit of a flux at the moment. So having like a plan for an entire year, like, hey, these are the events, dates, do what you want with them, is amazing. And I hope more old world organizers start to do this, particularly in other cities. And the second thing is, from a hobby standpoint, it's awesome to see, hey, I've got some hobby goals to hit, right? Maybe for that June long weekend, or that double gaming day tournament, maybe that's when I want to get my new army ready for, right? And so I've got 6 months that I can plan out of building it up, and then I've got a goal, I've got a date to hit. Whereas when you don't have that date in mind, sometimes you can lose that motivation a little bit. I know, like, they were basically running events anyway in these kind of brackets, but when they don't pre-announce it, you can kind of lose focus a little bit. So it's good.
Yeah, I agree. And also, with the WSWG guys, because their events have become so popular, when the tickets drop, the people that aren't within their spheres can often miss out. And I will note that they've also increased the size by, I think, 4 players. So there's 44 tickets available this time, which is fantastic. But now, at least, we have an idea of when tickets are going to come out and what to expect, etc. But no, I completely agree with you, Chris. I mean, I'm going to give myself time. I said on the most recent event that I'm not going to be going to another the most recent tournament recap that we did here on the channel, that I'm not going to be going to another tournament until I've got a fully painted army. So I'm going to skip 10th of January to make sure that I've got a deadline to work for the 14th of March, and then I'll go on from there. I don't want to rush myself after exams finish at the end of the month here of November. But yeah, this is young man, fabulous.
You.
Well, it might actually be the first 2-dayer many of us make it to, the one on this calendar. Plenty of forward planning for those who need to do it.
Well, I mean, funny that you say that, but I think it's also important for us to call out here that WSWG has made a bid for the Masters Series hosting, and it could be that 2-day event towards the end of the year ends up turning into that, or it could be they plan a specialized event. We don't know. Either way, as you say, I mean, I think it's probably going to be, they've given us 6 months warning. We know what to expect from the events that they run. We know the quality that they're going to bring. And so maybe it is something that we can collectively work towards influencing with partners and organising care for children over the course of a weekend to actually enable us to go and participate in an event that goes over 2 days, which frankly is something that I have not done in a decade.
Last 2-day event I went to, I think, was Worlds in 2019 for X-Wing. So, yeah, I love it. I love it. Do we think if they do get Masters, and I don't mean to derail this chat, but hypothetically, if they do get Masters, is that going to mean that the people that don't make Masters, all of us, mean that, like, do we miss out on that
I don't
bracket
think
of,
so.
like, do we miss out on that month, or are they just going to have it in a separate room, etc.?
I would assume they would have it in a separate room. I think they've got enough of a base of a community here. When you really look at the community for WSWG, there's maybe 5 people that are interested in Masters out of the 50 that attend. So I would predict that that's going to be the main driver, is we'll host Masters, be great. I mean, to me, they have to get it because it's either that or that gaming arena down in Melbourne with the pit of tables at the brewery, which, to be fair, is a pretty strong bid. But aside from that, no one has the quality from what I've seen. But I would predict that it's the Masters in one room taking up, is it 16 or 20? 20, so 10 tables.
20, I think,
and then it might just be, rather than a 40-player event, a 30-player event or something like that. Because I can totally predict, you're saying this time, 44 in January, 48 in March, 60 in June, etc.
100 by the end of the year of 2026. I do have to say, like, I do disagree with you in terms of the interest for Masters. I think that if anyone got asked and it was local and achievable for them to go, it would definitely be a consideration. I mean, the only reason that I wouldn't go to something like Masters would be because I can't afford it, or I'm not interstate, like I can't go interstate, or that it's not Renegades, right? Like that would be the drawback for me. But I do think that there's probably a lot more interest in Masters in that sort of upper echelon invite only tournament criteria locally and probably domestically than you might be advertising. People just love it. People love going, and people love representing themselves and their local communities. I think it's always been a part of hobby. So yeah, I think if they can do it as two separate events, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. As we mentioned when we had Richie on, you know, we need some way of having an Australian response to the British, Welsh, Scottish, and Irish Lions tour when Richie gets around to organising that as captain of the English team next year. But yeah, I mean, I suppose we'll see. It has. If we reflect on last year and the positioning of the Masters event, how it was maybe a little early in terms of hosting it for the community, but it was also, you know, it was in a state where a lot of players, certainly, I believe, who ended up being sent invitations in New South Wales. You know, it's a difficult thing to organise that interstate travel for a few days, particularly when the core of the player base is parents or people with, you know, families. So yeah, I wonder what the changing of venue could mean for that, particularly, you know, in the next year.
I also think that they should, just pure numbers wise, they should make it a clean 32. I know that draws are a factor, but I'd love to know if the top 20 was for a logistical perspective or from, you know, as you've said, like an early start perspective. But 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, like that's just a perfect sort of 5-round go. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Also just means more people get to be included.
I wasn't sure about the 20. Probably if we go back to some of the earlier episodes of World of Odds, they actually speak about that. Holistically, I don't see why not, Tom. They couldn't go to 32. Gomo just hits a switch and changes the Old World rankings metrics to 32. To your point, Alistair, with 20, they're probably looking at inviting 32 anyway, with dropouts. Yes, probably if it's in Sydney, you'd get more Sydney-siders, but then you have the same problems for the Brisbane, Melbourne people. And so
it doesn't really matter about the Brisbane, Melbourne people, though, because the best players are here in New South Wales, so it's not going to make a difference.
I'd also like
the big 2 days,
Tom,
to
point out that
it doesn't matter about the big 2 days, mate. It's over. Sorry. Everything else is inferior.
I'd also like to point out that Sydney is between Brisbane and Melbourne, and it's an easier place for people from Brisbane and Melbourne to travel to than Brisbane people going to Melbourne or Melbourne people going to Brisbane.
Why don't we just have it in the capital?
No one wants that, Tom. Not even Canberra.
I've just come back from the capital. My goodness.
Do you remember when we drove down to the first Wing X-Wing Nationals?
That was maybe one of the best little hobby experiences I've ever had. Ever. Do you remember Alistair's pajamas? I'll never forget. Never. God.
I don't remember
Tom,
my
but please
pajamas.
remind us.
What were my pajamas?
It might not look. This is a PG episode of content. Let's just move on. Anyway, I just think that traveling to team events, if you are able to get there, if you're able to do it, just go. Like, you know, especially for a 2-day event, it'll just be so much fun. Especially if it's run by the WSWG guys. Even if it's a foregone conclusion and New South Wales just sort of knocks it out of the park. But anyway. The first of the players packs, WSWG guys, they're, as always, incredibly organised. And they've already told us what to expect from the January event. This is, as I said, probably the one that I can't go to. Renegades is in play. Now, I do have a few questions for you guys who play probably, you know, significantly more games than myself. You said that after the most recent event, Spring Fling, there was a lot of calls for a character cap. And we're not talking about anything crazy in terms of, you know, restrictions or like some extra comp system. We're just moving the 1,000 allocation down to 800 points. Alex, that seems to make you happy as a potential Demons player in 2026. Can you give me a little bit of insight as to why?
Yes. Yeah. So I've been saying this for a while, but Demons have the distinct advantage that as the character cap comes down, their feasibility goes up, in my opinion. And that is being driven by the fact that greater demons are both combat behemoths and have access to magic in a tight little package. And they're toughness 6, Great and Clean 1, toughness 7, etc. So at 1,000 points, yes, you can still fit double graded demon and so forth. But at 1,000 points, it also means there's double Chaos Dragon on the field, which means that perhaps your greater demons aren't on the same sphere as a double Chaos Dragon. But at 800 points, you can only have one Chaos Dragon and maybe a Manticore flying around in the character sphere. So when I look at this, and going back to one of the previous events where they had it capped at 25%, which was a flat 500 points, you could fit one greater demon. I took a Great Unclean one. That was it. He was a level 4 wizard, almost impossible to kill. So he's great at preserving points, controlling the board, and whatnot. So coming down to 800, I was a bit shocked it was 800. I fully expected it to be like a 33% cap, either 25% or 33%. Maybe the guys have worked out that 800 point is like a secret niche point to stop undead being able to combo, or exactly that, stop double dragon. Shout out Chris Shah, who pretty much tabled my gyros in the third round of last one, went on to win it with double Chaos Dragon. So yeah, that's my context.
Cool. Do we think with the 800 points, Pete Jenkins, who has been our Lizardmen fanatic, and I believe the Prophet of Sotek, aka one of our most recent patrons, sign up in the description below, he was saying that if you drop it down from 2,000 points, i.e., that's in the rule book, this is how many units you can take, to 1999, would that be enough, do you think? Or do you think that the 800 points is a little bit more fruitful as a whole? Because I think that this, for me, for example, I was really hoping, should I be able to make it to the 10th of January, I was really hoping to bring 3 characters, one of which would be mounted. And this, for Ogres at least, really limits those options. And I don't know if Ogres are the ones that we need to be limiting here, etc. Right? What do you guys reckon about that?
The 199 thing is, I think he was saying split the field into like top tier, they get 1999 and bottom tier gets 2K. And so yes, it would probably work in just a very subtle way in stopping some of the spam. Versus this, it'll be interesting to see. The point I would make is, again, dropping down from double Chaos Dragon, which is a very powerful combo, to one Chaos Dragon means that, Tom, maybe you don't even need the mounted guy to be effective, because it's less characters by minutia and more troops running around. Potentially.
I the bigger problem, and this is across the game, and it doesn't really matter what comp system you put in, is if we take Ogres, for example, or really any of the Renegades, they just don't have the same options that a lot of the good armies have. Like Undead, they could pivot in so many different directions. You can put so many restrictions on them, and they've got more options up their sleeve that they can pivot to. Like we saw that with the Ethereal spam, I think, recently. They weren't doing that 6 months ago, and now they've hard pivoted into Ethereal spam, and they're probably going to pivot again when more restrictions hit. With Ogres, as a good example, when you put restrictions like this in, you're reducing our options that we didn't really have in the first place. And I feel like we get funneled more and more into everyone takes basically the same list for that faction, because we just don't have anything to pivot to.
Well, I wonder.
I do agree with you wholeheartedly, Chris.
Yeah, I wonder about that though, because so it's a broad impact, right? It's not targeted at any one faction. This is broad strokes everyone gets painted with the same brush. Everyone is limited. But I wonder what that ultimately means. I think my reflection, having looked at this, is the max copies of same units is more impactful for my variant of armies than the actual maximum points on characters. And the reason is because the armies that I've been playing are armies that aren't built around a character as the center point of my army. The character's a utility to the units in my army. And I think it's just a different way of playing Warhammer. Now, what they've done by saying, max number of points spent on characters is they've gone great. The armies that are centered around characters that are Death Stars, that are focused on putting lots of points into limited numbers of characters, they are impacted in that way. And then the armies that take multiple copies of a particular character type, so in Null, me with Witch Hunters, for example, they are now limited. You can only take 2. So the efficiencies for both are changed. And I don't think, I get the point where you're coming from, where maybe it encourages a more homogenous approach because it limits your options at the sort of greater extremes. But I also wonder whether it's impactful enough to actually just change the way that people do list building, because it's not going so far as to saying you can't do the things you really want to do. It's saying you can't do them in exactly the way that you want to do them in. And beyond that, I do feel that when we talk about the restrictions that they've placed on specific factions, this is the first time that they've done that as well. So beyond, the limitations just in generally in terms of how composition and list building will go, they've also said no undead faction, so Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts, no undead faction can take a BSB, and no magic banners can be taken on, I think it's infantry units. So that's
core
huge.
units.
Yeah.
Core units. Okay.
That's extremely targeted.
That's really, 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 really big, right? That dramatically changes the way that those armies will play. And several of the most efficient lists are now just totally no longer viable because of that change. On top of that, Cathay, which, I mean, again, Richie spoke at length about the impact that Cathay has allegedly had on the UK European meta. Cathay hasn't felt that impact here for whatever reason, but they've gone right ahead and taken the learnings from that and said you can't take more than 1 ring of jet, and balloons can't be taken as character mounts, which, again, pretty dramatic change for a limited unit roster, which Cathay currently inhabits.
I suspect the impact of Cathay has been diminished here because a single balloon is $285. That's probably goes a long way towards why we haven't seen it. Yeah.
The undead changes are not surprising, really, and I think they were openly talking about this in the chat group, because at the last event, shout out to Actor and Alex Brown, who just boys, forgive me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but cruised to the top tables 3-0. Alex Brown especially
wasn't it Alex's
a video out about it?
Literally, Alex's verbatim was
his thought experiment.
It was the least effort I ever had to put in to get a top table result, and that's a pretty big indictment on the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure I heard Actor. He was playing on the table behind me, saying this shit's too powerful. Anyway, as he was playing the game. So
then why are you taking it, my man?
Well, so to be specific about those changes, the BSB allows the leadership reroll, which means that on I think Necromancer's a leadership 7 and Master Necromancer's a leadership 8 from memory. And I would say that a 7 is a 58% chance of passing normally. With the reroll, it becomes something like 85 or probably even 90%. On top of that, on a Master Necromancer, even more. So they were talking about potentially saying that you can only arise or raise dead on 1 unit per turn. But I just think this is a cleaner cut way of doing it, because really there's no other use for the BSB except for that explicit reroll ability.
I think I know this is quite intense and it's a bit of a big change, but if we're going to go down the route of changing things anyway, I feel like the best way to make it feel appropriate is to probably, and I say probably because I haven't really tested this, but just probably make it magic, because then at least at some 100%. Point it becomes interactive. And I think I'd rather see that than, limiting BSBs, because outside of the mechanics of the game, a BSB is like a quintessential part of a lot of the old world modeling and hobbyist sort of aspects. I would be a bit bummed out if I got told that I couldn't bring a BSB in an ogre's army, for example. It would never happen, but it's just, I think we want to push the drive on interactive experiences here. That's all.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. I do feel that, when you talk about the undead factions, however, they don't interact with leadership. Like the most you interact with is taking crumbling tests, and that's sort of it. And demons are ultimately the same, but can demons even take BSBs, Alex?
They have a demonic locust, which is effectively a BSB, but it works as -1 to your crumble, the demonic instability, the wounds that you take. Critically for them, it's that you can't auto teleport back to the warp within 12 inches of the same demonic type. So that is something that demon players always forget, and I've seen it so many instances online, is they go, oh, I've got a Slanesh demonic locust, and I'm going to stop my Nurgle unit from teleporting back. They have to be the same subtype.
Interesting.
So they have to be Nurgle on
Nurgle. I wonder whether that's an opportunity to interpret this in a different way, right? So the fundamental problem with the BSBs with undead armies is that it enables any leadership test to be re-rolled, and because, as Tom points out, the tests that the necromancers or the high priests are taking are leadership based, it's hugely problematic. Now you can go through the process of then changing that to magic, but you're then limiting. I mean, maybe
this
that
is the way
change, that it needs to go, because many of them are spellcasters, right? And so you take up now a spell slot with this particular rule, and then they're using it for the number of spells that they can use every turn. And I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. Maybe interactivity is better. I don't see as much of a problem with the removal of BSBs outside of, magical banners and those sorts of things. But I also feel that, what we've seen in undead compositions of these just ridiculously large model count core units being taken, and then having their most powerful banner effects applying to those insanely large core units, like I can totally see the rationale here. Maybe it's too far, I don't know, but I can absolutely see the rationale.
I completely agree with you. I do think though, what the real issue is the number of models you can regenerate per unit for these undead armies, right? And this change hasn't really gone about to limit that. I mean, there's some magic banners that can provide buffs and stuff like that, and BSBs definitely provide you a lot of insurance in terms of reliability, etc. But on such high leadership models anyway that are going to be doing these things, like necromancers are what, 9 anyway, right? Am I correct?
No,
like these master
7,
necromancers?
7 and the master's 8.
Right, okay. Well,
I think only a vampire counts 9.
Yeah, okay. I just think that the Brown brothers have been talking at length about how they should be limiting the number of times you can try and cast the spell to X amount. It's just like being able to take out 15 zombies or skeletons or whatever have you, and then having more come back than you actually removed. That feels like the actual problem with undead,
Well, you played Alex Brown, right? And what was your experience in? Because I've actually not played Vampires or Tomb Kings in the now almost 2 years of Old World, incredibly.
Yeah. Well, so we drew. There was a few problems with that scenario, right? Like we drew on points, but he killed my baggage train. And so the problem with the scenario that we face, and I think the WSWG guys have addressed this, was that baggage train was the only objective that they were running in that mission. So it was just a very cagey game where both of us just sort of sat back. I tried to guard my baggage train. He tried to guard his. He had undead bats and the bloody ethereal chariot that could just run through and then still base contact my baggage train. And that sort of gave him a significant advantage. So I don't think I can really say that I played undead. It was just sort of I played baggage train, and Alex Brown was able to beat me on it, if that makes sense. But that's not to say that, you know, when I think it was Simon Kwok that I played the most recent tournament before that. You know, you'd kill bloody 10, 15, 20 of these freaking zombies, and then they would just bring them back. And half the time, dice are being rolled, and you don't really know what's going on. They're just sort of being rolled, and models are getting put back on the table, and you're just like, oh, I have no agency over this. So I think it can lend itself to being very frustrating for a number of people. I'm obviously a saint and beautiful to play against, so I never get frustrated. But I can understand why some people, like Chris Hallett, would get really salty about that kind of stuff.
Extremely salty. I had a rant on this podcast about undead, and I think I called them out as like that whole mechanic is in a game where you have kill points, you cannot be having regeneration at that level. You just can't do it because it's not even that they're returning models. It's like
we've set them off.
I killed. You've done it now. I've killed 50 points of zombies this turn, and they've just regenerated 50 points.
Just say Graveguard. Why do we keep saying zombies? We're talking like, really about Graveguard.
Because we're being nice. But like in many ways, that's 100-point swing. It's not actually a 50-point swing. It's a 100-point swing.
But I get you. It's fully.
That's why I think real quick, Alistair, that's just why I think that it should just be. Yeah, I just think that that's why it should be a Magic thing, because that, you know, fully invalidating your interaction with the game, make it an interactive centerpiece by just meaning that I can dispel. That's all. Or just, you know, as the Brown brothers from the 2+ podcast have said, make it a one per turn thing. I think that's probably the best way to do it. But anyway, they're the restrictions that they place on Undead and Cathay. I think that the Cathay restrictions are a lot better. And when I say better, I just mean that they're actually going to have a lot more meaning. The Ring of Jet can only be taken once per army. That's a clean, necessary change, and I think that's fantastic. Magistrates and strategists not being able to take Sky Lanterns as mounts is a big shame, but probably necessary as well. Were people spamming these balloons, or was it the balloon spam in general that was the problem?
LVO, the winning list was, I think it was 4 or 5 balloons.
Yeah. I think the question, Tom, rather is locally, and I mean specifically locally to WSWG.
Yeah.
We've only seen one Cathay player, and I think Paul had one balloon. He was being like nice about it, but we've seen at, I think it was Moab, which had a Ring of Jet spam list in it. And I cannot remember. We'll have to check how that person went.
I don't want to like belittle or rip into that guy a little bit. A big reason why he didn't do better was because he just didn't have enough practice with that list. I think he went 3-2, but if he had more practice, I could have easily seen him go 4-1 or 5-0 with that list. I'm pretty sure he like his first few games with that were like Moab itself.
Well, look, at any rate, it's going to be very interesting. The 800-point character change is going to be really cool to see. I wonder if maybe they're just throwing too much at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, they've got 800 points. They've also got max copies of the same unit. As Pete Jenkins said in a private chat, I think maybe it might have been Dave, I don't know. But if you'd go 1999, at that point, a lot of the ethereal spam that Undead can do sort of gets self-limited anyway. So I wonder if that is a better direction. But as we've seen with WSWG before, a lot of the time they'll have a crack at a format, and then the next one, which will be, I believe, in March, will have a completely different set of rules. So at the end of the day, hopefully they can just keep iterating until they find what they are happy with. I
think
we'll see.
One thing that I kind of hate with all of these, because this is like just another comp pack, right? And I think we've seen so many comp packs in the last 6 to 12 months. I feel like big problem with the game is we need a points update. We need a points balance. Like if you can go I don't even know what one Graveguard model costs, but like if you stack all those buffs on it, should it still cost that same points? Probably not, right? It should probably be a lot more expensive. And then certain other armies, like ogres, certain units are just like so expensive you just never run them. Every other game system that GW runs, they do these quarterly, I think, balance updates, or even half yearly, depends on the system. They haven't done it yet with Old World, and I'm wondering if they probably should do one in 2026.
It kind of sounds like what you're pushing for at the very moment would be square-based comp, maybe.
Square-based
at least
does not
maybe
change
try
points, though, I believe.
Yeah, but it changes the amount of points that you can spend, right? So like Ogres Renegades get 2,200, Ogres non-Renegades get 2,400. It's at least an interesting conversation. I've not tried it. I've not tested it. I'm not going to talk to it. We've been told by them that it's a very flexible system and it's meant to be iterative and not a final thing. But yeah, maybe as a for now. I think, look, we'll probably get a 2.0 of the old world relatively soon. And GW is, probably wringing its hands together at the next profitable thing that they can make. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, GW run a financial year to March of next year, so it's either going to be 2.0 or something like Kislev next year. Because I think for all accounts and purposes, Cathay blew all expectations out of the water, and these guys all have sales targets as a department, so they'd be very happy with. I think they refreshed Lord of the Rings as well this year, Chris, if I remember. No.
Last year, maybe?
Last year?
Recently.
Anyway,
semi-recently.
There was one last point before we move on, but it's an important point. They have made one more change, which is that now that all infantry will be counted as scoring units, not just core.
Provided that their unit strength 10 or higher.
Yes.
Yeah, they need to meet the normal core sort of scoring restrictions, etc. But yes, all infantry do it.
Will we see Ironbreakers for the first time?
But I mean, this is going to be interesting.
Spoiler,
I disagree with this change. We've had a lot of chats about this. I think this is a departure that we didn't need, but it'll be interesting just to see what happens on the day.
Do we know? Because I mean, I'm not in contact with these guys that often, but like, do we know what units they wanted to see on the table? Because I can't think of many infantry units that sit outside a core that weren't seeing play.
Probably things like executioners and all that kind of stuff.
Not to name all the Dark Elf ones, but not to cast aspersions at dear Michael Lockett, but he's a big fan of running Tudor Guard, so I wonder whether that had something to do with it. A big block of Tudor Guard being able to score is obviously something very useful, but yeah, I don't know. It feels really niche as far as the change goes. And Tom, your feelings around give the match play guide a chance are well registered. I don't know. I'm inclined to agree with you, and the reason is more around the exploits that our dear Alex are probably more likely to apply here. Things like Skin Wolves, being monstrous infantry, are able to score. Things like Beasts of Nurgle, which are the most absurd unit in the game, being able to score, I think is potentially problematic. I don't know.
Yeah. If anyone turns around and says, "Oh, but man-eaters can score," don't.
I think it's just because ogres get zero.
Tom, it's
benefit.
The time of the Yeti.
Well, actually, ogres probably benefit from this exponentially, but are we going to be able to make the most of it?
No.
I just think that this
meet you in episode 15.
the time of the Iron Guts is over. The time of the Yeti has come. All right. Well, I'm dying. So can we move on to hobbies, please?
Talking about demons and Nurgle demons, we have a lot of printing and painting to do. And so what I've got here...
Especially given that now all infantry can score, right, Alex?
Well, actually, this is for the 2+ teams event.
Oh, sure.
Which is going to be my Nurgle demon prints. And what I've done here is I've taken the massive Behemoth model from Rescale Miniatures and scaled it down by 80% to its current size. It's normally about a foot tall, and it's my little baby Nurgle demon prince.
Can we just call out that this is probably the first and probably only time that Alex has scaled down a model to actually fit on the base properly?
I was regretting going that far.
Very valid, very valid, Chris, given that he scales everything a mine down and scales everything a his up. Yeah, I think that's an entirely valid point to call.
But yes, it does fit on the base. And
overcompensation has been a thing for a long time.
Look, size matters.
I think Alex.
But yes, but actually, but Chris, to your point, that plague bearer there is actually taller than you think it is. So
because it's another scaled up miniature. I think Alex's comment for the people at home when we were talking about this and he was printing it, and he literally said, "Oh no, the model fits on the base." I think it's too small.
Should I reprint it? Should I reprint it?
It feels really small.
So that's my hobby, is that this guy, starting next weekend, is going to get a paint job. And I've still then got we're still finalizing lists, but either going to be going Blood Crushers or Beasts of Nurgle. And my Beasts of Nurgle are these massive, like, crab walkers, which absolutely will not fit on their bases, but, we'll make it work. Moving on.
Oh, dear.
Oh, Thomas.
Yep. That's a jury for anyone. I've been caught in the throes of jury duty, which is going to be very, very interesting. I have to go to court tomorrow morning and say, I've got exams in a few weeks. I can't do this, but please sign me up for next time. Because unfortunately, once you become a lawyer, you can never be given jury duty. And I've never been given jury duty, so it's just unfortunate timing.
It sucks.
But this is taking... Chris, your comments?
Yeah, but you don't want to be a lawyer, Chris. It's a very different...
I also don't want to serve on two separate court cases, thank you.
No, that's so fair. But no, I've got to do this. I finish exams at the end of the month. Hence why I can't make some of the 2+ events, but I'm incredibly excited to finish and then, have 3 months off where I can finally dive into my hobby for what feels like in forever. So yeah, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I've got my Warhammer cabinet back in, so that's given me motivation, and it's just looking at me, all the unpainted minis up the top. They're just really upsetting me constantly, and it's just driving me towards further motivation. For December.
It's good.
Perfect. Well, we've lost Alistair, but we could probably do it for him. These are talking about the 2+ teams event, perhaps an indicator. Of course, probably no one's listening by this stage anyway, of what he's looking to bring, which are 2 of the beasties.
A Hydra and a Charybdis.
Yep. And I would probably predict that 10% of the time he's spent actually painting the model, and 90% of the time he's spent doing those water resin bases.
Which do look incredible. The infamous Chaos Dragon, Dark Elf Dragon, which he won the second Oldhammer.
Chris Shah has really gotten into you, hasn't he? It's really triggering you. He lives rent-free in your head.
Oh, I love Chris Shah. The absolute gentleman to play against, whilst he reamed me. We don't have any for you, Chris, but maybe we'll end the night on just quickly talking about the poll that we put up into the Patreon a few weeks ago, which was just a pulse check to the community as to what they would like us to look at next year. mix of interviews, gaming, painting, etc. And I think, boys, even though it's not we haven't got like hundreds of votes here, but 10 individuals have voted. Keep going with what you guys are doing, which is doing interviews. Alistair's godforsaken tagline of what makes him a behemoth has stuck, and we're now living with it. But the second top, and much to be anticipated, are live battle reports in the Behemoth shed, which is actually my garage.
And we've actually made a little cheeky purchase for said live battle reports in the Behemoth shed, or the Behemoth shed, I should say. And that's these guys. So we've got little microphones to feed fantastic audio in. And we're making a few things to make sure that whenever we do pull the trigger, which is hopefully going to be January-ish, maybe at the latest, and start filming some of these, they're going to be in 4K quality, and they're going to be really good laughs, and probably short form. But anyway, we'll have to play around with it. But very excited. Very excited.
Yep. I have lots of lights, and shout out to Sean Croker, who has a amazing supply of floodlights, which he is making available at short notice to assist if needed. But yeah, super keen for that. Of course, Tom and Chris, we've picked the absolute best season of the year to try and do this. The middle of summer.
Australian summer.
The hottest,
Australian summer.
It's going to be unreal.
In a shed.
In the shed in the great western,
With
northwestern Sydney.
Aircon, right?
Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
I think it's also worth shouting out that we'll try and also sprinkle some other videos in, like some hobby videos. I know Alistair wants to do a video on that the water effects basing that he's done. I'm sure you'll do another demon one when you do that. Demon Prince. Tom is going to try and do some ogre stuff, and God knows what I'll do. But we'll figure something out.
Yeah, I want to update my oil wash video because that was kind of going, and the crystal bases video, which was just basically static pictures. I know we were very early on getting to do things, so yeah, lots to do there. I want to try sponge painting as well. And Tom was good.
Sorry, someone's just opened my door and like looking at me like the Grudge from that horror movie. Anyway,
all right. Well, let's move on, because I think Alistair probably got the child coming out awake at 10 o'clock at night. But yes, Chris, lots of videos to look forward to. If you guys are listening an hour and 26 minutes into this,
what do you
I do have ideas. Let us know. Let us know what to do.
One of our shortest episodes.
Well, one of them, yeah. I mean, I am a bit devastated because I put in the poll my only contribution of thinking of thing was like a painting live stream. Didn't get a single vote.
You didn't vote for it yourself. Rookie error.
You could have.
I'll go back and do that, and then re-edit this video from there.
Yeah, we actually have to restart this whole podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all corrupt. It's all corrupt, guys. We've got to go again. So otherwise, Tom, the painting cabinet's looking good. The model cabinet's looking good. We've got plenty to look forward to over the next few weeks. Aside from that, I suppose we'll leave it there for you guys to have a good night. Catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.